thing we're going to talk about is this crazy welfare fraud in Minnesota. I'm going to tell you what I think about this.
Did money from Minnesota taxpayers earmarked to feed hungry children wind up in the hands of a Somali terrorist group? The allegations center around a massive welfare fraud case being brought in Minnesota. A 78th defendant was charged just today. And now reports are coming out that some of the stolen money may have wound up in the hands of al-Shabaab, a Somali-based terror group. In response, President Trump says he intends to end deportation protections for about 700 Somali nationals in Minnesota, calling Minnesota a, quote, hub for Somali gang networks.
See, the biggest problem I got with this is that not with this story, not with what Trump is doing, but with what people say concerning these situations. I believe that the left is turning a blind eye. I believe also that there's a lot of people that are saying this is racist. The liberals got them in an uproar. You guys can't be in an uproar and say this is racist when there's clear signs of fraud. And that's clear what's going on. It's signs of fraud. Ilhan Omar and Tim Walz, some of the representatives that have been elected into the office in Minnesota, you can't tell me that they did not know anything about this. They had no idea, no concept that something of this level, this caliber was actually taking place. It's because they are lying to themselves and to you. They know, and they justify it already because America is rich. America is rich. They're not talking about you and me. They're talking about the billionaires that sit in office. They're talking sit in office. Yeah, Nancy Pelosi. They're talking about the billionaires out there. They're talking about the multi-hundred millionaires out there, headed towards being billionaires. And they're saying that they probably are saying this is justified. There's no justification for this, because when people that really need this money in America look for it, they say state to state that the funding's strapped because the money's going to this illegal activity that's potentially funding terrorist organizations that hate us.
Though he's provided no evidence for that. So what are the facts on the ground? Investigative correspondent Rich McHugh is at the federal courthouse in Minneapolis, Minnesota for us tonight. Rich, what are you learning?
Hi, Elizabeth. Well, we're at the federal courthouse where that 78th indictment came down just a few hours ago. All of it tied to Feeding Our Future. That's the corrupt nonprofit at the center of all of this fraud. We spoke with current and former federal sources, and they tell us billions have been stolen since 2019, that Minnesota is just riddled with fraud, and that a lot of this money goes back to Somalia, and a cut of all that money has gone to the Al-Qaeda-linked terror group al-Shabaab. But I want to reset this for viewers because it's complicated. This all stems from Feeding Our Future. That's the largest COVID fraud ever. These criminals opened more than 200 federal child nutrition program sites throughout Minnesota, and sites lied, claimed to be serving meals to thousands of children a day. They created fake attendance rosters, fake invoices, and the government reimbursed them. David Gaither, he's a former...
So this is racism, right? Listen, and tap your liberal friend. This is racism. They're being, racist towards Somalians, and nobody's speaking up about it. I don't see anything on the left about this. I don't see anything from CNN justifying this. They just talk about it, and it's not Ilhan Omar's fault. It's not Tim's Walz's fault. It is just some reckless players who did it, and that's the story they're just going to let us just believe.
Senator here, he saw this firsthand.
Rich, this is the Safari restaurant in downtown Minneapolis. This is the epicenter of some of the biggest fraud and waste and abuse in this area. The owner right now is currently in jail, federal jail. This restaurant, which seats about 35, supposedly served 18,000 plus meals a day.
A day?
A day for 7 months.
Man, that place doesn't even look like they can fit 18,000 people in that place. A day? Wow.
18,000 plus.
Now, Minnesota Rep. Ilhan Omar, she was a fixture at this restaurant, the Safari, during her run for office. I think we have a photo of her at the restaurant with her supporters in 2018. Feeding Our Future, that's that corrupt nonprofit. It was the epicenter of it, but others spawned from it. There were home relocation services, child autism. They were bilking $399 million in services fraud in 2023 alone. To date,
Ooh, 399 million in 2023. So you got to wonder the years before, how much were they making? 399 million. Trump shut them down, shut them down, shut them down.
86 people have been indicted and counting. Federal authorities tell News Nation 79 of them are of Somali descent.
Ooh. 89 out of 80, 86, 79. This is not racism.
We've been holding accountable those that are perpetrators of the crime. But we are not holding accountable those that created the opportunity to have those perps do what they did.
And that would be?
The policymaker, the Attorney General, and the administration.
Now, federal sources that we've spoken to, several of them, said the same thing to me, Elizabeth. They say there's a saying in the Somali community here that when it rains in Minneapolis, umbrellas go up in Mogadishu. That just about sums it up. Back to you.
Wow, almost 100 people charged in this scheme so far. Rich McHugh reporting in Minneapolis. Thanks so much.
So almost 100 people charged. So when you hear them getting upset and people are getting mad, and this is not a racist thing. This has little to do with race and little to do with color. What I guess I feel like a lot of people don't really get is that the same liberties that we have, those same liberties, when it becomes the same thing that could put you into slavery and a bondage, because people use words like racism and Nazi and all these things that they're flying around, that they're throwing out to discourage conversation concerning what's taking place in Minnesota. And the conversation needs to be, how has this gone this long without anybody shutting this thing down? Why do we have to wait until a Trump presidency to actually get any type of answers, this being confronted? But they will shut down. They'll shut down a budget. They'll shut down the country. Fighting for food stamps, for SNAP, and for Medicaid. When they should be going back and looking at, what are we spending? Who are we sending it to? And should we actually be sending it to them? And that's the that's one of the biggest problems, is that there's no checks and balances. Nobody's being held accountable. And now Trump comes in and he holds these people accountable. And he's saying this, and you hear it over on the left. Oh, this is racist. This is fascist. This is all these different things, never addressing the lying, the stealing, the scam that's taking place in their backyard. Dealing with the people that they're raising, that's voting for them in some cases into office. And why now you can understand why Ilhan Omar why she continuously keeps and has a stronghold in that community. Because when you could turn a blind eye, why would we put anybody else as a representative that could potentially stop this cash flow from flowing? This cash cow. That's it right there. That's it. We literally have a district in our country now ran by a complete different ethnicity group that does not have any sovereignty, any respect, any respect for America. They don't. The place that actually took them out of where they are, they scamming it and they running it down. And the cry is, hey, there's not enough jobs. There's so many different. But just like Dearborn, Michigan, this area, this district is ran by people that don't like our country. They won't fight for us. They won't sit. We go into World War III, they'll be the ones that's opening the back door for our opponents to get in. And that's the saddest part. So he needs to hold them accountable. And this thing runs even deeper.
A massive fraud scheme uncovered in Minnesota found money intended for social services has been allegedly siphoned indirectly into the pockets of the Somali terrorist group al-Shabaab. Somali immigrants in Minnesota have reportedly been abusing systems meant to help the most unfortunate among us, including the latest federally funded autism services. The autism fraud scheme reportedly amassed $14 million.
Man, you a slime bucket if you stealing money from autistic kids, bro. You're a slime bucket.
Through Medicare claims for services that were never provided, involving kids who never had autism. And the Somali immigrants behind this web of schemes have allegedly stolen billions from taxpayers, much of the money going back to the Somali government, where it would then end up in the hands of terrorists. Manhattan Institute investigative reporter Ryan Thorpe was one of the first exposing the schemes for their ties to terrorism. With us now, Ryan, a line from your story stuck out. The largest funder of al-Shabaab is the Minnesota taxpayer, and you cite an unnamed source for that. What is the evidence that all of this money that was taken and the billions upon billions of increased funding in Minnesota for social services ended up in Somalia?
Well, billions of dollars of government welfare money is missing in the state of Minnesota.
How do we define missing?
Well, the fraud is so bad that the U.S. Attorney's Office has come out and indicated that they believe their entire government programs, where the fraudulent claims outstrip the legitimate ones. There are cases where indictments have come down or guilty pleas are already in to the tunes of hundreds of millions of dollars that were fraudulently obtained, filing false claims alongside doctored paperwork. And the indictments are continuing to come. And the U.S. Attorney's Office has made very clear that this is a network of fraud schemes stacked upon fraud schemes, and that while the true dollar figure in terms of stolen funds at this point isn't quite clear, it's safe to say that we're talking about billions of dollars.
Okay.
Wow. So Atlanta was notorious for scammers. I guess Minnesota just beat out Atlanta. They just beat it out. Yeah.
Oh no.
Oh yeah. You guys just broke the bucket. I mean, Atlanta has scammers, but this nothing compared to these motherfuckers up that shit. Ain't nothing.
Oh no.
I mean, dude, they've been doing this thing for years. Eating well. They need to be showing pictures of what they driving, because I know for 100% these guys are they live in it. They live in it. Wow. 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 So you wonder where all the money's going. Hey, see, this is the thing. I keep saying this is when there's a difference between politicians and business people. And you make politicians business people, meaning you ask them to run a business organization which has people that work for it, which caters to the public, and you ask them to run that business like a business, but you forget that all you're doing is asking lawyers, failed business people, people who couldn't get jobs, who are socialist and communist, people who you wouldn't even hire them to flip your fries. You ask them now to run and represent you, and they do it. And then you ask them to manage the money for the country. And this is what happens. See, y'all can throw stuff at Trump and say, man, the guy's getting billionaires to fund renovation projects in the White House. He's not for the people, and he's using the people. Tell me the last time where we made some of these billionaires and millionaires bend over.
Oh no.
Tell me the last time where we got something from them for all of the work and all the services that we buy, all the services that we buy that we pay overpriced for and that they outsource to China. See, my thing isn't, I'm not anti-billionaire either. No, money can be used for good as well as it can be used for evil. And I'm definitely not freaking socialist or communist. Hell the fuck no. I lean more to the right because I do respect the creative nature of finding things and creating assets that actually help the country, that actually help your fellow man, okay? But godly, when you put these other people that are politicians into fucking office and you give them the purse strings, look what they get. Look what they end up doing. Look what the hell they end up doing, yo. And then you say then they scream and they say that it's a fascist regime. Should we be ignoring all of this because you say it's a fascist regime? Because fascism, just like you throw the word racism out, just like you throw the word, all these other words, and you woke and you throw them against people, and you believe that, oh, it just needs to stick because you said it sticks. But this is not anything that anyone can ignore. This is the reason why they need to drain every last government program funding this shit, because you have people that actually live here that really do need it. I'm telling you, I'm not don't give it to anybody type of person. But I imagine how many grandmothers, how many mothers, how many families that really go through a lot of shit that really need that funding in Minnesota, in any other states. But he can't get it because it's going overseas funding terrorists. And the left won't say anything about it.
It's pretty wild, some of the things that you lay out, including one group called Feeding the Future that went from getting $3.4 million in 2019 to $200 million 2 years later. They grew faster than NVIDIA. How did nobody see that? Or is it that people and the government and those who are supposed to be the watchdogs, like Tim Walz, like Keith Ellison, the Attorney General, there just weren't looking?
I think it's safe to say that there was a real unwillingness or inability among Democratic state officials in Minnesota to recognize some pretty obvious alarm bells here. All across these programs, claims were skyrocketing, absolutely spiraling out of control over a short period of time. And the reality is that the Somali community, which is where these large-scale fraud rings have been concentrated within this population in the state, it is a sizable voting bloc. It is a voting bloc you have to win if you're going to win political office in Minneapolis. And so I think that...
So you clearly see where the money comes. So if they can get the money in fraud, send some of it overseas to Somalia to do the dirty work over there, they can also keep some of that money in state to actually fund who stays in office in that district, and also who stays in the governor's office. I keep saying, man, this is crazy. I watch these TV shows where you watch, I think there's one show, man, yeah, Tulsa King. If you ever seen that movie Tulsa King, that show Tulsa King with Sylvester Stallone out right now, there's a play for the governor's office, and it comes right from the Dixie Mafia, right? But they're funding who stays in the office, while I think Sylvester Stallone, they're trying to also put someone in the office. We think that they're not telling the story, and that's one thing about Hollywood, I would say, with all their crookedness and crazy shit that they do. You cannot ignore that some of the storylines that come out of there, they're rooted in truth. There's some things, now, you may have this fictitious thing that comes out of it that they make all this extra stuff out, but it's still rooted in truth, because the only way you keep this blanket of deception and this ignorance going on is you got people in office that turn a blind eye. They just ignore the situation. They don't care, or they just totally just get paid and keep turning a blind eye to it. Because there's no way, if you're the AG, if you're responsible for processing criminals for the state, can you not see like the trend of people that show up in front of you and you have to prosecute them on fraud related, or possibly prosecute them on fraud related charges stemming from federal funds? I guess to ignore that and to act like it doesn't exist, like you're part of the problem. You're part of it. So they need to gut the whole thing. They need to gut the whole thing. And when you look at it at the microscopic level, you say, man, how does this affect Minnesota, Leon? I keep hearing people say some shit. They say like, hey, man, what the fuck this got to do with real estate? Bro, do you not think money goes out to buy houses that people who are hardworking could actually buy in that state and in that city? People that are like doing shit the right way, legit. They can't buy shit when they're competing against money that falls from the sky like a boat. They can't do that. Do you think it helps with their tax dollars? Do you think it helps with the appreciation of their homes or depreciation of their homes? Because don't you think that when that money flows in, it's cycled into legitimate businesses in the community and surrounding area? And everybody knows the easiest way to get some shit is to buy, when you get a bunch of money, buy some real estate, sit on it, you rent it out to all your Somalia family when they come in, and now the people who can actually buy it can't buy it. They can't get it because you got it held hostage through your fraudulent funds. I mean, come on now. Oh no. You got to recognize that shit. You got to. When people, you can't say that this is happening in Minnesota and it has no effect on me. Fuck no, you can't. You can't. That's one reason why we have issues in local market. Real estate is very local, very, very local. And when you go to Minnesota, one thing I keep hearing when people go to Minnesota is they love the freaking federal benefits. They can go there and they can get, I've heard that shit from immigrants more and more times that have moved from, I know one girl, she was doing here and she freaking moved to Minnesota. She was doing here in Atlanta, would do my wife's hair. She had a mobile hair business. And she's like, I can't make it. The money's not all that great. And I'm like, shit, you're getting like $300 to $400 a head. What the fuck? The money's not all that great. I'm going back to Minnesota. And she goes to Minnesota and doing great, doing great, doing great. She's American though. Okay. Now, granted, those programs are there. How much of that is actually designated for immigrants that should be going to Americans? It's very liberal, very free, and they're milking the shit out of it.
It was likely a incentive here that made some people not want to look too closely at what's been going on.
Wow. And that would explain why now it's the U.S. attorney looking into it rather than the state law enforcement or state fraud investigators. Is there any indication, Ryan, as you get, and it's one of those things, you drop an investigative piece and then all of a sudden you get 1,000 more tips, that this goes higher, like actually into state government? You get the last 30 seconds.
I can't confirm that, so I don't want to get out in front of my skis here. What I can say is that this story has generated additional tips, and it is something that we are continuing to look into as we push forward with our efforts to expose the fraud rings that have been taking advantage of the generosity of Minnesota taxpayers.
Yeah, stunning also how little pickup this has gotten around the country in terms of the rest of the media. Applaud your guys' continued work on it, Ryan.
Yeah, I noticed that. I had to actually search for this, and it just came through. I was listening to another creator, and he had dropped this, and I started searching for it. A lot of these prosecutions, almost close to 100 people, they started some of this 2-3 months ago. Nobody said anything about this. Nobody. And it blows my mind. Like, it was more centered in Minnesota and in that area, even though it had federal and large scale ramifications.